Well, hello, everybody. It's been a minute for me, even though you guys are seeing episodes every couple of weeks. I have been in hiding, like hibernation mode. So I am excited to be here, and I am even more excited to have a beautiful conversation with this amazing soul. Please welcome Darrel-Lynne Thieson, also known as D. This beautiful soul and I met at the MYM conference in Calgary. And D and I sat beside each other. And from that moment, it was just like, that was it. Lifetimes. It's like I have known you forever. And it was like instant connection. Um, I think for both of us, it was a weekend that it changed a lot. It was kind of like a trajectory change, and the signs and synchronicities that happened just in that short amount of time had you and I both in like, what the f- is going on?
Yeah.
Um, so that weekend alone was nothing short of magic, and we can talk about all of it later. So before I start talking to you and deep diving, I just wanted to share. I'm going to read it off of my notes. Your heart is so pure, and the lessons you chose for this lifetime to overcome have not been easy, to say the least. I had the pleasure of deep diving into Dee's story. She shared some profound personal struggles that she has faced. Dee shared her secret with Tiffany and I over the weekend, which we will be deep diving into this story soon. And I wanted to bring you on the show to share your story, and knowing that this story is going to be somebody else's survival guide to get to this beautiful place of where you are today. So, guys, welcome Miss D to Raw Babes. Thank you, D, for being here.
Thank you. That's an incredible intro. Thank you so much, Kristen. And I'm just so stoked to be here because we are popping my podcast cherry, and I'm
We
here for
are.
every minute of it. So
I've literally been manifesting, like the moment you told me your story, I was like, D, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, this needs to be shared. You need to talk about this. This is profound. This is going to be life changing for so many people. They're going to feel so seen. And um something else that I did want to say is I just know there's all these souls that are like waiting in line for
mm,
you. It's like been waiting for this opportunity for you to share your story, for them to be like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Right.
yeah, and I'm
So
here for it.
I know you're here for it. And I'm so grateful that you've popped your cherry on.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to be doing this with anyone but you right here, right now. So
Okay. So now we should share our little now. Maybe we'll get into
now,
that later, but no, we should share it now. So just the other day, actually, let's go back. So D and I, since MYM, have just connected. We are like cheerleaders for each other, and any tidbits that we can exchange or help each other with, we are just doing that. And it is so divinely led. It's like the number synchronicities. She sends me messages at certain times or little pictures like the 222. And we'll dive into all this later to like reel you guys in.
all the
But
signs.
all of the signs.
Yeah.
Um, but I even just lost my train of thought, but that's okay. I'll go back to MYM for a second.
We were talking about you were going back to now
Thank
and
you.
yeah. I don't know where
Okay.
you were gonna mention the sign you saw the other day.
let's go back to actually how we even came up with
Yeah.
even having a sign. So why don't you take that over? Because
Yeah, well, I guess
hear
it
from
came
you.
from, I shared with you that Joel, my husband and I, we have this little thing that we picked up from friends where whenever we're closing off like a conversation or either of us are leaving the house, we say ABC. And now ABC stands for always be careful. So I feel cheesy even saying what it stands for because I'm like, I'm not here for comfort. I'm not here to be careful, but it's just our little gesture of like thinking of you, be safe out there.
100%.
And when I say ABC, I can say ABC to him in a moment and it just means something. So I was like, we need that. You and I need that, right? Because
100%.
yeah, so I don't actually remember how the now came in,
Yeah. I don't know
but
either.
it's the word. It's now the word NOW in all caps, and that's the word. So,
It's so good.
and
Mm,
you sent me a picture the other day. You were out, and there was like a car in a parking lot, and the license plate said "Now, fam,"
yes.
and we're like, "Now."
So it's cool to share the insights with all of you guys because, as you know, this is raw, unscripted, unfiltered. We just share the juice and the goods. But even before that, Dee, remember you were in your car and you were driving and you
Yes,
saw, was it on a van?
it was on a van. It said now, and that was the brand, their brand. I don't even know what the company was. It just said now. I was
Yeah.
in a parking lot like a couple weeks ago, and this van pulled up and it was said now. And I was just like, and I didn't take the picture,
You know, that's okay.
but I
But the
told you right
message was
away.
still the message was delivered. And for you guys that you don't know, it's like this thing that happens between us. She didn't know what I was going through, and I was going through something really big at the time. And I was contemplating on sending this badass email. And I was like, do I send it or don't I? And I was like sitting with it. And then out of the blue, she has no idea what's going on. And she sends me now and she explains to me, she's like, Kristen, I just saw a freaking van drive by and it had now on the side. So I'm like, okay, thank you for that sign. I am dropping it. So Dee and I have been talking about this for a long time since we've met. I was like, I want to get you on the show. Let's book it and whenever it's meant to be. And you were like, yes, you're like, I absolutely will down the road. So
Yeah.
when you and I recently were talking about it, it was kind of like, we just need to do this and let's just pick a date. And we kind of like hemmed and hawed. And then when I got to the parking lot of the grocery store and it said now, fam, I sent a photo to Dee right away. And she's just like, can you make this shit up? I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
you
So
can.
we booked it.
Yeah, that
And
was time right there.
it's actually even more special, the date, because today is what?
It is my grandmother's birthday today. She passed in 2007, but it's a special date
It
in
sure
my
is.
heart. So,
I agree.
and we just had our leap day. It's a leap year yesterday. We've leaped into March. Spring is almost here. It's just all the beautiful symbols are
It,
here today.
it's just time. Even today, like you and I talking, went from 222 to 333, 343, 444, 555. We're just
Yeah.
like, okay, we're like, okay, we get it. This needs to go down. So I'm gonna stop talking so much because I'd love for you to, can you just take us back to MYM when we were sitting beside each other and then a little bit into that moment before you dropped your big secret to Tiffany?
Well, that in itself was divine timing because the hotel that the conference was being held at wasn't where I was staying. I was down the road about 20 minutes and I was halfway to my vehicle in the parking lot. And I was like, why am I going back to this place when just intuitively I knew, just like, go back, go eat. I texted you. I'm like, are you eating? Like, I wasn't sure where you were. And I walked in the building and like, there you were. Just like, as soon as I walked in, I saw you and Tiffany sitting in the restaurant. So I beelined over and I said, can I sit with you? Can I sit with you guys?
I was like, yes, please.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, instantly I felt, well, earlier in the day when we sat down together during the event, but just like an instant connection, like you said. Can't quite remember how the conversation unfolded, but I just felt very comfortable and open sharing with you too. And um, I didn't have a full grasp even at that point. I had heard of your podcast, The Raw Babes, but I didn't have a full grasp of like what that meant and the things that you guys talk about. So it was it all unwrapped, it unfolded like very quickly. Like we were going to another level.
We sure were.
So yeah, I can't remember how it like
Yeah, me too.
honestly, but I did share with you that somehow that I had been diagnosed with schizophrenia.
So, you know what I'd love to do
Mhm.
is if we can go back and talk about, so when Dee had said that to Tiffany and I, we were just like, holy shit. It was just like everything that you had said, it just opened up this door of we need to share with you like so much more of what's behind that label.
Mhm.
And it was like we opened up this huge floodgate. So
Yeah.
before we go into the big floodgate, let's go back to your story. Let's go back to Dee and growing up and give us a little tidbit of you, what you were like. So Dee, can you please tell me in your words from your own version of yourself, what were you like growing up as a kid? What was your energy like? What were you into? Just tell me about the little girl. I want to know about the little girl.
Yeah. So I have wonderful memories of being a child, but I have specific memories that I can share with you. A couple
Okay.
that stand out. So when I grew up in a small town outside of Edmonton, about 15 minutes outside of Edmonton, it's called Fort Saskatchewan. It's a beautiful little city. And it was a kind of a treat to leave the fort to go to Edmonton and maybe go downtown, which it's laughable now because Edmonton's downtown kind of pales into comparison to like any downtown that you really think of like a metropolitan. But um, we would drive down there, and my dad worked in like the tallest building at the time in Edmonton. And so being in the back seat of the car, looking out the window, I would see these tall buildings. And when you're young, everything looks twice as tall and twice as big, right? Right. So yeah, I remember being in the back seat. My parents were sitting in the front seat. My dad was driving. My mom was in the passenger. And I looked at them, and I remember then they were talking, and I was obviously like looking out the window and kind of taking it all in and marveling at the scene. And I remember thinking, oh, this is interesting because I was thinking all these things in my head. I
Yeah.
was so excited. And they were just having a conversation in the front seat. And I remember this memory so vividly because at that moment I was like, and I'm sure I didn't have the words for it, but I realized I had independent thought. Anything that was going on in my mind was mine and mine alone. So that
Yeah.
was just a very strong memory. I was a very inquisitive
Wow.
child, but I also think I dimmed my light a lot as a child. And then similarly, another memory I have is in my parents' backyard. They, for in my younger years, they had these giant poplars, two of them towering in the backyard. And I was playing with my friend one day, and my dad, it was a hot day, hot summer day. My dad was sitting at the base of a tree and he was drinking from this cup, and it was a mug and it said hot, because it was like one of those like 7-Eleven mugs, remember those? And it
Oh,
would be like
yes.
hot beverage, but it was the middle of the day and I knew he had something cold in it. And I
Okay.
had this like realization of like, okay, so just because it says it's that on the outside, it doesn't actually mean that that's what's going on the inside.
Wow.
So those are two very distinct memories that I have. I've written about them. I used to blog quite a bit. I've written about those memories and documented them. But as a whole, though, my childhood was, my parents were just this beautiful couple. They're still married and going on like 40 some years. And
Wow.
yeah, I learned a lot about working hard, loving each other, communicating. I had a very blessed childhood.
Yes. And what
Yeah.
about siblings?
I have my brother. He's my older brother, Ben.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. When you were driving in the back of the car and you had that notion of like,
Hmm.
I'm thinking here and nobody else can hear or know what's going on. What age were you around?
I had to be, it was like under 10 for sure.
Okay.
It's quite young.
Yeah, that is young to
Old enough to
understand.
remember it, but I know that looking back now is a very young age to like have this realization. But I also now, I think I remember it so distinctly because it was, in a sense, it was foreshadowing some of the most profound times that I've had in my life, right? Because I had a whole story going on inside of my head, a whole world.
Yeah.
Um, and from the external, you know, people saw me in a completely different way, and they didn't really know what world I was living in.
Yes. And it's
So,
like that world too within all of us. It's it can be amazing, but it can also be really scary.
hmm
And at such a young age, um, you know, myself included, going through depression and having this whirlwind of thoughts that just came over me. At times you can think like that you're alone and you can feel I'm the only one that's going through this because nobody knows what thoughts are happening.
hmm
And it can be very enlightening and a beautiful thing, but it can also be detrimental and really scary. And then people don't know what's going on with them.
hmm
Um, so I would love to go into kind of next stages of life.
Yeah.
After, yeah, just
Yeah.
keep
So
going.
when I graduated high school, I was 17. I was just like a month shy of turning 18. And the dream, as a growing up, like I mentioned, it was a small town.
Yes.
The dream was to get out. Life's short, leave the fort. That's what we would say. So I was headed to the city. So I graduated and moved to the big old city at 17. Got an apartment with my girlfriend, my best friend at the time, and we lived there. It was funny because it was like a one-bedroom apartment, and we, yeah, she lived in like the living room. It was anyhow.
That's
But yeah,
that's the good stuff, right? That's like the back in the day where it's like you sleep on the floor, but we don't care because we're independent and look at us. We have our own place, right?
yeah, yeah, that was essentially it. No, I had some really lofty goals for my 20s. I wanted to, obviously there was the ambition of that was kind of pressed upon me from my parents,
Okay.
in terms of like going to post-secondary. So, kind of classic, like get out of high school, go to college, go to university, not really sure what we're doing or what I was doing, but
Okay, Miss D, can you please take me through your teens? Because you and I, when we get talking on the phone and we love to send voice notes to each other back and forth, and before we know it, we're into like 20, 30-minute voice notes where we're taking notes for our voice notes.
It's
And
true.
you and I have talked about so many times of our teens and that, or sorry, even to our 20s, that if we
20s,
would have
yes.
been friends in that era, we would have been wild. So let's talk about the wild era with Miss
That would have
D.
been dangerous, my friends, if we had known each other in our 20s. Oh my God. Um, yeah, there was a lot. I don't even know what to say. There was a lot of partying. I was working my ass off. I had an incredible job.
What was your job?
I was an executive assistant at a large company. I had climbed this corporate ladder like very quickly. Yeah, so like I can't remember what year it came out, but the movie The Devil Wears Prada came
Okay.
out. And I went and saw it with my mom in the theater. And I watched this movie. Do you know the premise of The Devil Wears Prada?
Just let's
Oh,
share it. Let's hear
I
it.
mean, so the main actress, she's working at like a fashion firm. It's the equivalent to like working for Anna Wintour, like very high level, like. And I watched this, and she's this assistant, but there's just this glamour to it and this challenge. Like she's working for a very hard ass executive, and strangely, I was drawn to this. I saw it, and I told my mom, I'm like, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it aligned with what I was kind of taking at post-secondary. So I eventually, like very quickly in my 20s, got into this EA role, this executive assistant role. And
Wow.
it was such an incredible achievement, but I was also burning the midnight oil. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, let's go for one drink, right? With your
Yeah.
girlfriend or whatever, or your colleague. And then the next thing you know, it's like 5 a.m. and you've had way too many and you got to go to work the next day. I did that a lot.
Yeah.
I can't even describe the trouble that I got into. So, I did the things and I had some fun. I was also very much like rebelling.
Yeah.
Like my parents were very strict, at
Okay.
least, but in my eyes, I think comparatively to my peers when I was growing up, I felt my parents were really strict. So getting out and being on my own in my 20s was like full on rebellion action. So there was
Freedom.
that the freedom was all about drinking, partying, and just having fun. But then I was also achieving because I had to show I was achieving something in the world, right? That
Yes.
was what I was told I should be doing, right? So
100%. So when did you, I have a question before you say what you're going to say.
mhm.
So what was that point that like how did you know? Was it that movie that got you to know that you wanted to be an executive assistant or did you know before a little bit before that, like when you were in your school?
So my mom, when I was growing up, my mom was an administrator.
Okay.
And there was something that I loved about how she supported people. She was always in this like supporting role, either supporting a team, and and then her skill set, I like really admired what she was doing. So I was like, I want to do what she's doing.
Okay.
But then seeing that movie kind of like took it to the next level because it was like, oh, I could be doing this on a very high level potentially, right? And that was kind of the lure and the draw there. And yeah, so yeah, that's
You
how
just
that
balls to the wall. And then how did you land your that job? Like what was the steps to get to that?
Yeah, so after I finished what we have here is a college. It's called Grant McEwen. So once I got out of Grant McEwen, I was in a call center for a little while. I was doing bank surveys with
Okay.
people, like cold calling and doing surveys, which I like. actually take that job with me to today. I excelled in that position.
Yeah.
I was always like number one on the list, like completion rate. People all love doing surveys with me. So I had a
Wow.
lot of fun with it. And then after that, I think I really quickly moved into the company that I started to scale my career with. So
Yeah.
I started in the contact center. So I kind of used that experience in the call center, moving up to this company's contact center where I don't know if I want to say the company's name. I'm actually just gonna like leave
It's
that
your,
out.
okay. That's your choice.
Yeah. So I was in the contact center and then I applied for an administrative assistant role in another department, which I got about 6 months after I started in the contact center. And then within a year, there was a job posting for an executive assistant role for one of the vice presidents. And I applied. I was young. I had to have been, I don't quite remember, either 22, maybe 23.
Yeah. That
And
is
I interviewed for the role. And I
good
was
job.
probably more nervous than I am right now. Maybe a little bit.
Oh my God. Yes. That would be nerve-wracking in your 20s.
Yeah, it was scary because like I just not to mention I saw this movie and I had this idea of what an executive might be like. And this I was interviewing with the woman I would be working for was a female. So there was that element to it as well. And so I
Wow.
interviewed and I didn't get the job on right off the bat. They let me know I didn't get it. And then I can't remember, maybe 4 or 6 months later, they came back and they said, "Are you still interested?" And I said, "Of course I am."
Wow.
So that's how I got that role. And it was wild. Like the lady I worked for, she was incredible. She even like I had and it was like Devil Wears Prada. Like she paid for me to get a fashion consultant and
What?
we went shopping.
Talk
Like
about manifestation from the
yeah,
movie.
that's what my mom always says. She goes, "You manifested that."
Yes, you sure
So
did.
yeah, it was it, it taught me a lot that role because I was just really thrown into it, but it taught me a lot. Yeah,
It's I find it so funny with life. Like I call it Earth School and these lessons that we learn along the way and how every single thing like that call center job, which then led you into the executive role, it's like the moment you're ready for the next chapter, it presents itself. And it's like, okay, do you want this? How badly do you want it? And then it's like you apply for it and then you face that fear. And then all of a sudden, give it 6 months later, boom, you're in that position. And everything that you've been through geared you up for that. It was like hairdressing for me, talking with people. All I'm doing is having conversations, making them feel and look beautiful. Well, it's turned into a different world for me where I'm still helping people feel beautiful and love themselves in conversations, but it's in a different form. So if I didn't have that, just like you to get you to this place today, it's played such a big role.
yeah.
It's like the school that we don't even realize that we're on learning these lessons.
It's funny because I used to joke like there was a point in my life and in that period in my early 20s where every time I applied for a job, I got it. And I was like, kind of like, ooh, look at me.
Okay.
I get to every job. But then when you stop getting the jobs that you apply for or the things, there's the lessons in that too. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, listen to this. It's probably not aligned. It's happening for a
Yes,
reason. Or you need to be looking at yourself. What do I need to be tweaking here if I really want what I desire, right?
100%.
So there was those lessons as they unfolded too. And then yeah, because I did get to a point where I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted and had to really unpack that too.
A
So
100%. And two, it's like sometimes people think they're so determined to get this and they've got this fantasy of like what it looks like to be in that role. But I always say it's a universal redirection like you said, with the alignment,
Hmm.
it's protecting you from something, or it's redirecting you to where you need to be. So don't be so hell bent on the relationship or the car or the job, because it could be really shitty and your team is protecting your ass to be like, we got something way better waiting for you.
Okay, well then that's like the perfect lead in to what happened. What came next? The ultimate redirect.
Let's go.
Right? Because I was in that role when the I don't even know how to describe it. I never know how to describe it. The shift of a lifetime happened.
Yeah.
I remember leading up to what I call my first episode, my first round. Um, I was I was, it felt like I was, the way I describe, I used to talk on the phone with my mom a lot around that period. And I remember describing it to her as, I feel like I've been walking down a long corridor and I'm about to, like a long hallway, and I'm about to take a corner and I don't know when it's coming and I don't know what it looks like. And yeah, that's what happened. Um, so I don't know if you want to get into that or what that looks like, but
Yes. Let's go there. That's
we
what's
can go
dropping
there.
in. That's your download. Let's go there.
Okay, so um I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit so you
Yeah.
can have a better grasp on like what was going on in my life at that time, on
Yeah.
like the daily, if you will.
Yes.
So when um yeah, so I was probably getting close to 26, 27 at this point.
Okay.
Just to note, I was seeing a guy from
Okay.
about the time I was 23 to that point,
Okay.
who he was um he was like 10 years older than me, and he just was going to check all the boxes of all the dreams, right? But the biggest catch is he wasn't that guy. He didn't want the same thing. And now during that time, which was like for almost 5 years that we spent together, he would not call me his girlfriend. He would not say we were together. It was,
Damn.
yeah, I mean, that's a whole thing to unpack in itself, right? But we had beautiful times too. We had some of the most beautiful times that I in that during that period.
So,
Um,
D, question, he wouldn't call you his girlfriend ever, like even to you
ever.
or to someone else, or like, oh,
No,
introduce, oh, this is my girlfriend.
no. We no.
Okay. Let's,
So working with kind of in this relation, what do the kids call it? Situationship?
is that what it is now? Fuck.
Yeah, that. Um, and then yeah, and I've shared this with you previously, is like I was taking some boxing classes. I was like really got into boxing, really got into fitness. I was going to these boxing classes like every single day almost. And then at one point, this guy who I was seeing came to me and he said, "You should, have you ever thought about going back to school?" And I mean, I hadn't thought too seriously about it, but for some reason, when he said it to me, I was like, "Ooh, there's something there. I need to like
Okay.
listen to this. I need to investigate this." So yeah, I decided going back to school was like where I wanted to go next. I was going to continue working full time, and then take some evening classes and do some management studies.
And we're
So I
still
could,
with the Devil Wears Prada lady. We're still at the
yeah, we're
same.
still
Okay.
there. So I
Okay.
went to her. I went to my employer. I went to her and I said, "This is what I want to do. I'd like to go back to school." And they funded it. They funded it for me.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were paying for me to take these night classes, and because there was benefit there, right? I could further my education and there was potential for me to grow in the company at that point if I, had some other credentials on my resume and some more knowledge, obviously. Yeah. So
She clearly did not want to lose you because you're such an asset.
they didn't want to lose me.
Clearly was like, no, okay, I'll pay for it.
Yeah. So I went back, I was taking management studies and I loved it. It was in my early 20s when I was in school, I just was not there. I wasn't present. I wasn't focused, which I think is pretty classic for a lot of people. You get out of high school, the last thing you want to do is get up at 8 in the morning and go back to school, right?
Yeah.
So in my late 20s, knowing that my employer was funding it, I had a better vision for myself. I dove right in and I loved every moment of it, from like even the accounting classes, like I didn't expect to be enjoying myself that much, but it was just like it was giving me this new purpose. I was
Yeah.
very, very excited and I was very dedicated and disciplined, working, going to school, doing my homework, and then having my situationship on the side, which was very, very detrimental to my mental health even before
Yeah.
I knew, like, because I want, there's this, I want to be with him but I can't be with him,
Mm.
this pull, and but I can't leave him because I can't live without him, but we're not together, like what is this? It was very devastating, right?
Yeah.
So that was a large stressor in all of that. So you can imagine working full time, doing homework, going to night classes, and then having this added mental stress. That's when the perfect storm formed. That's when it all came in. And it started to form while I was in marketing class. It was over the semester that I was taking marketing, which kind of added to the story,
Yeah.
which I can share on. But
Please do.
yeah, I found I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping well. I would lay in bed at night and run through my day over and over, and then I'd like it was unhealthy. It was an unhealthy pattern, but
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was just not aware of like what mental health, like what I should even be looking for or be aware of or nurturing or fixing, or the importance of sleep. All these things were just off the table, you know.
Wow.
Um, so I think where it really crept in is I started having this slight paranoia.
Okay.
I was like, is someone watching me? Is someone perhaps I didn't know for sure, but there were also signs coming in at that time. So in the marketing class, I was working on a team project and we had to create something that we were going to sell. And at that time, I was blogging, very interested in writing. And I was looking around the world, kind of just like looking out. And I said, you know what the world needs more of is positivity. People need to be sharing their stories, and like how about, and then so that's in the group I proposed what we would create, and it
Wow.
was called Project Positivity, and it was based around a website, and I won't go into that, but point is I had this project I was working on called Project Positivity, and at one point I had printed out some of the documents for the project, and they were in my apartment sitting next to a window. And my apartment for some reason was prone to ladybugs. And one day I came in and there had to have been more than a dozen dead ladybugs on my paper on the floor. So there was like these tangible synchronicities and signs, but then the mental kind of um, there was something mentally coming in that was insidious. Like it wasn't good either.
Yeah.
So there was good signs and not good signs.
Yeah.
So the executive that I was working for, one of the things that she liked to do was um, at Christmas, usually around Christmas time, we'd give everyone in the department a book, but it would be a signed book by the author. So we'd have to source the book, make sure the author
Wow.
could sign all of these books, and so we could gift them. So I'm sitting in marketing class one day, and the teacher, the professor, he brought in a good friend of his who's also an author. His name is Rod Prendergast, and he came in and he was presenting to the class on how to write a book and to market it without being associated with a publisher. So it's self-published. So he's a self-published author. So he had this book that he had recently written, or actually, I don't know. Anyhow, he had this book and it was a national bestseller that he self-published, and it's called The Impact of a Single Event.
Okay.
So I get my hands on the book because he came and gave an incredible presentation in the marketing class. And I read it and I went to my boss and I said, this is the book we should get and gift, gifts at the end of the year or whenever we want to give the department another gift. So she said, let's do it. So went to Rod and got all these copies signed. But with that, I created, there was a story that was starting to form in my head that was outside of reality.
Yeah.
So of what was actually happening.
Yes.
So that's where the paranoia kind of slipped in. But we can't ignore the fact that the book was called The Impact of a Single Event. And it has the book itself is based on synchronicities and signs and symbols. It was just incredible.
Wow.
I still have a copy. Anyhow. So yeah, I guess the story I started telling myself was that my marketing teacher was following me.
Yes.
He had found my blog, which I write about some kind of interesting things about life and those sorts of things. So I don't want to gloss over that. I write about, in my mind, some pretty profound stuff that if you really go into it, you could be like, ooh, at least in my mind, this is what I tell myself, there's something here, right? And knowing that this teacher who also teaches marketing and understands marketing, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, okay, there's something here. This was the story.
That's right.
It wasn't reality.
Yeah.
He was just teaching a class.
Yes.
But yeah, so I started thinking that maybe he was following me. Yeah. And then one day, it was starting to kind of compound. The irrational thoughts were getting stronger until one day I woke up and I was getting ready for work. Actually, no, there was just before this happened. And I remember because it was St. Patrick's Day. I was going out with my friends to go party.
Yeah.
So it was March, somewhere in March, and things always happen in March. It's the Ides of March. This just seems to happen. So
yes,
I had the only way I can really classify it is a panic attack, but I'd never had a panic attack before.
Okay.
I don't quite know. It's probably a very individual, unique experience to the person, but the way I remember it was all of these puzzle pieces were falling into place in my head, and they were just softly being placed. Everything was forming this picture of why I was in this form, in this life, in that moment.
Wow.
Every single thing. So it was a lot. It was a major download very quickly.
Wow.
But it was St. Patrick's Day and everything was green. So the symbol that started to come in for me, or that I was being told, was green means go. So I went out that night, not knowing that drinking, and I kept escalating this spiral. I was fueling the spiral, but not knowingly, right? So that, and then shortly after that, I woke up one morning getting ready for work. And I don't know if it was when I got to work or I was already very, very unstable, but I was still showing up every day very difficultly, sorry, that's not even a word, but This
It
is
is
very
now. That's
good
Tiffany and I
now.
always say we make up our
Yeah,
own language. So this is
love it.
perfect. Love it.
Um, yeah, it was a struggle, but I was going to work every day still. But that day in particular was it was the day that everything changed. Maybe that was the impact of a single event that day, but there were many single events which led to everything. But
Yeah.
I got to work and my rational mind was just probably 80 to 90% gone at that point.
Wow.
So my boss comes up across my desk and she hands me a birthday card. Very normal. We need to get a birthday card signed. Um, and we out of all the executives in where we worked, I was on the third floor and everybody else was on the top floor. And whatever the language was, it was like, you need to go upstairs. But the way my mind heard it was like the big guy upstairs. Like we were talking like
Yeah.
God stuff there.
Yes. Like we're talking like the main star of this entire production.
Yeah, that
Yes.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or however you want to fashion that. But I would so but then very quickly the download was that something happened because and that is the line. Something happened. And I didn't know what, but the scene flipped for me and I thought something had happened in the external world
Yeah.
where and I remember I was holding the card and I went upstairs and I was going through the motions of like, I'm going to get this card signed. I need to get this card signed, like very basic function things.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. And I sat down in the hallway on the top floor waiting by the elevators. And one of my colleagues came up to me and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm not." It still gets me emotional.
Oh, babe.
Yeah, I said, "I'm not okay." So I went back to the floor that I worked on and I went into my boss's office and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "How many people died?" She goes, "What?" I said, "How many people died?" Um, because suddenly the download that I had was that I didn't know how many people were alive in the world.
Wow.
I know I'm missing parts of like how
No,
that's been,
that's okay.
but the question was how many people died. And I kept looking out the window and I was like, how many people are alive? I thought like a bunch of people died overnight. And I don't know if it was
Wow.
because I was telling myself Passover. I don't, you know, so I was but you can imagine.
Yes.
I'm in this office space where I show up every day and we're all very professional and put together and I'm not making any sense. So my boss, who has never driven me home in my life, drives me home. Like I leave my car at the office, she drives me
Goosebumps.
home and we call my parents who happened to be in the city that day and they come to my apartment and they knew that I was starting to have some issues,
Yeah.
but this was all new. It was all foreign and they tried their best to like help support me, but they knew that something was exploding that day. So
Yes.
they came to my apartment and I was out of my mind. Like because the story that I was telling myself in my head was that a bunch of people like most of the world had died outside or something like that. And I remember I was leaning next to my bed with my feet on the floor crying so hard and my feet must have rubbed the carpet very hard because I had these wounds on the top of both of my feet, which I wish, I mean, I don't wish anything, I don't wish it away, but it really compounded the story as we went on and I went into the hospital, even that. So
Wow.
yeah, we can pause there if you want.
Okay, so I want you to tell us what happened when your parents came to your place.
Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, they really quickly got on the phone and were able to somehow find a mobile psychologist. I want to say psychologist. Yeah.
Mobile.
Yeah, like I was like, this isn't real because like that never happened,
Yeah,
right? And it was, oh my gosh, I'll just add this detail because
please do.
the apartment that I was living in, I was on the eighth floor. I loved my apartment, by the way. It was awesome. And my growing up, my friend down the block, her older sister was my babysitter, who when you get older, like the age gap just feels smaller, but we became kind of friends, and she ended up moving into my building with a few floors up from me. So I think at some point I called her and said, I need my babysitter.
Aw.
Yeah. So anyhow,
Oh, that's
um,
so sweet.
yeah, I was just like crying out for help. So anyhow, yeah, they get this mobile psychologist. And that's when I was like, this is just all this is, that's when like this is just not real started to really make it easier for me to like think that it was just all an act,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But their emotions were so raw and real that, I mean, that said otherwise. So anyway, the psychologist comes. I'm completely like disoriented in my apartment, thinking that the world is kind of ending in a way.
Yeah.
So they quickly assess me, and I'm told I need to be taken to the hospital. And it's so weird because like the events unfolded, it seemed so quickly. It was all in an afternoon, but then there was police there too. There was police at my apartment, and excuse me, they took me downstairs and put me in the back of a cop car and
Why?
took me to the hospital. I think because it wasn't a situation where they needed an ambulance,
Okay.
but they didn't know. And now this is where I just want to kind of clarify some things, because I can understand why uh, emergency people are on high alert in cases like they were even experiencing with me.
Okay.
I knew that I wasn't going to be a physical threat to anyone. I knew that I wasn't on any substances,
Mm,
but they don't know these things. So
true.
they have to really, you know,
Be
take,
cautious.
yeah, take those measures. So anyhow, they put me in the back of a police car and took me to, ironically, synchronistically, the hospital that I was born at. All right. So I was sitting in the emergency room and then very quickly given a bed in the emergency room. And it was becoming nighttime at that point. So the lights were kind of dimmed in the ER. They were coming in and out, asking me questions, just trying to understand what was going on, because obviously I was having some sort of psychotic episode, but it was my first ever. Um, and I was in a whole other delusion of why I was there. In my mind, I was there because I was being reborn.
Yes.
Right.
That and first of all, I just want to say,
Yeah.
Dee, thank you so much for going to this level. And I know how vulnerable and raw and authentic you are and are being.
Mhm.
And, you know, everybody watching, myself, like sitting here observing this, it's so brave of you to tell your story. And I know it's not easy because it's reliving the experience again as well. So
Mhm.
for others that are also here, it's also so healing at the same time because it's freeing you from this story or this secret, even though you've shared it, this is on another level.
Yeah.
because you're resonating with so many other people that have been there but have been afraid to say their story or to talk about it. So
Hmm.
hats off to you for your bravery and thank you for continuing to go so deep because mental health and what we're embarking on and uncovering to share, it's a game changer. It's
Yeah.
going to change people's lives and even the trajectory of them staying alive versus ending their life. So
Hmm.
what you're doing is such a big thing.
Yeah.
And thank you for
Yeah. I think,
continuing.
and thank you so much. I think on that note, I do want to say, because I know we've kind of gotten into this, the unfolding right
Yeah,
now of my story, which I'm, I'm very happy and feel very privileged, honestly, to share. Um, is I'm also here today, very much living my best life. So I just want to always be infusing the reminder that there's hope. There's always, always hope. So, yeah,
beautiful. Thank you
yeah,
for saying that.
absolutely. So, where do we want to pick up? Do we want to?
At the hospital, and here, I know what I wanted to say. Like, here's Dee who is not sleeping, working at the job where you're this high-end executive assistant, you're going to school and these things are happening, you're partying. It's like this recipe for this catastrophic event
Yeah.
to start happening. And it just opened up this doorway. What I'm going to pull into this conversation right now is energy, frequency, vibration,
Yeah.
because this is a big key component in all of this. As Dee's going to be sharing her story,
Hmm.
it's so important to realize where she was vibrating at and where she was receiving all of this information at what level. So I want to stop there. I'm going to let you keep going because
Yeah.
this is so important.
Yeah. I think it's also important to know just like one other catalyst
Okay.
before the straw broke. Um, the guy that I was seeing, he went away to work,
Mm,
and um he essentially like dumped me at that point, but he didn't even do it in like a honorable way. He just stopped talking to me.
wow.
Yeah, so, and like, if you know if you know me and how I love, and like I loved I loved deeply, it
Yes.
hurt that much, that deeply.
Yeah.
So that
I
was
can only
crushing.
imagine.
So
And
that
especially when you love him so much, right?
yeah.
At that point.
I mean, let's that's, like I said, that's a whole other conversation, because I did love him. We weren't in love, but
Right.
um yeah, he
It was like
also,
our fantasy land, right? Like
yeah,
us women and
yeah,
men
yeah,
can get this fantasy in their mind of what something is. It's an illusion because it's not real. And
yeah,
they think that, oh, it's good, it's perfect, it's great. I love them. But the reality and the red flags are so
yeah.
strong, but we just choose to put our blinders on and keep going.
Well, yeah, and I mean, even in this case, like, everyone around me knew that I just needed to just stop, just stop. And I couldn't
Okay.
just walk away. So he did it for us and for me, but that meant I had to be devastated.
Yeah.
So that was just part of that storm that I was kind of referring to.
Yes.
So, which all happened very close together. So, yeah, so in the hospital, it was interesting. I started kind of reverting to this place in my mind where I would say I'm just a baby.
Yeah.
I'm just a baby. Because there was the story as it was quickly evolving was I was not ready for what was coming. So please, please just, if you can at all, be easy on me. I'm just a baby. I'm new to this whole thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because there was like these speakers in the hospital, kind of like over the bed and stuff. And I could have sworn I heard this like storm
Wow.
coming through the speakers. So I thought there was like, in my mind, they
Yeah.
put me in the hospital to isolate me because there was an apocalyptic scene happening outside the hospital.
Yes.
That was the vision in my
Yeah.
mind. So
And
I
it's
thought
so
I even heard
real.
it through the speakers,
Yeah.
right? Oh, for real. This is 100% real in my mind. But then there's also that like, but hold on, reality was not that this wasn't reality not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, they ended up deciding at some point that I needed to be transported to a different hospital that same evening. So they strapped me to um a gurney, I guess is what they're called, and then had my arms tied down and kind
Holy
of wheeled
shit.
me through they wheeled me through the ER and the waiting room, and people were looking at me, and I thought, like, I don't know. I didn't know.
Like in your mind, you're probably like part of the movie. Like, oh, people are
Yes,
looking at me like
it's
I'm
all
this
part of the movie. The
main
movie is
character.
forming.
Yes.
This
So
is the
you,
movie. It's forming,
yeah,
right?
makes sense.
So they put me in the back of another. At this point, they put me in an ambulance, and I can't see out the windows. But there was this frenetic energy, just like I'm in medical terms, I'm in psychosis.
Okay.
But energetically, it was outside of me too,
Wow.
right? So in my mind, as the story develops, as I'm going between hospitals, it's nighttime now, pitch black outside. I can't see anything. I actually think I'm being taken to a place where I'm going to sit in front of a panel
Yeah.
of, I wouldn't call them judges, but there were names in my mind that were coming up of, I would say, seniors. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the sages
Yeah.
of
Saints
our
and
world.
sages.
Yes, like it was
Saint
going to be
Germain.
a panel of
Yes.
these sages
Yeah.
that are like real life people.
Yeah.
One of them, like Graham Hancock. I was like, Graham Hancock's going to be there. There was some
So
other people.
actual people that you could physically
Yeah, think so.
visualize.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was visualizing these people. I can't remember all of them, but there was a panel of them. And I
Wow.
thought that I was going to be brought before them to prove myself
Yes.
because I was in the middle of like an initiation of some sort. You know, if you are who you say you are or who you think you are, then come in front of us
And show us.
and show us.
Wow.
Um, but that's not what actually happened. I just got taken to another hospital where I was rolled into another ER, and at that point, you know, I didn't have socks on. You know,
Okay.
I shared how earlier I had rubbed my feet into the ground. I had developed essentially a rug burn, but I didn't remember that I had been crying on the floor.
Right.
So I thought these wounds on my feet had just like magically appeared.
Okay.
So there was like a whole Messiah complex coming in at this point.
I can imagine.
I know, I say to people even now, I'm like, the Messiah complex is very real.
Yes.
Um, you know, because, and again, this is like a term the young kids use today. Is it like main character energy?
Yeah.
I was carrying the main character energy very hard. So
This was, you were
um,
the star of the show and
I was
you
the Star of
It
the show.
ultimately is. This is what Earth School is you are the star.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was quickly deflated knowing that there was no panel, but I was like, okay, then that's fine. It was just this like the best way to describe it was like the cheese, like on the string, maybe, or like
Yeah.
just the thing. It's like, okay, take me through the next trial.
Yes.
Take me through the next trial. So I was entering into a series of trials.
Yes.
Um,
Totally makes
yeah.
sense.
So that first night in the hospital, I eventually did get put in a room. And yeah, actually, this is interesting that we've come to this point because I'll share this because it's my grandmother's Earthside birthday
Oh,
today.
here we go.
Yeah. So, um, in the room it was a shared room. There was my bed and then a bed, but then a curtain. It was the middle of the night. I had got admitted. By that time, it was probably midnight. Um, so I didn't never saw the person in the bed next to me, but I could hear them kind of breathing. And my mind is so far out there and so open at this point that I think my deceased grandmother is her energetic form is in the bed next to me.
Okay.
And that we're there to have like an energetic exchange,
Yes.
which I felt like what was happening, right?
Totally.
Same grandmother that it's her birthday today. So
Wow.
yeah,
It,
and that was my
honestly,
first night.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Before, like, I want to keep going into your story before I like talk about anything else regarding this sort of situation, but um what were your parents saying to you at this time? Like, what were people saying to you? Like, was there any part of you that would come in and out of like, okay, I'm in this hospital, and then would you go back and forth, or were you just fully just blown open to this other world?
So I was definitely fully blown open, but I was very aware of my surroundings and the
Yes.
people.
Okay.
So throughout this whole process, like that going, being in the hospital, like being transferred, there was doctors coming to ask me questions. Um, my mom would, my parents were terrified, to be
Oh.
honest. I don't think my mom, I'm pretty sure she couldn't be in the room at some
Mm,
points.
yeah. Oh, can only imagine, babe.
And it's something that it's taken me years to overcome is having my blood drawn.
Oh, I
So,
can.
when you start going into the psychiatric realm, they're taking your blood and they're not being shy about it. So I do know that I remember when in the first hospital where I said I thought there was like an apocalypse happening outside.
Yeah.
My dad kind of had to help hold me down so they could get the
Mm,
blood out of my arm. Um,
just brutal.
so they were really just
Wow.
maintaining, I guess is how I'd describe it,
Yeah, and at
doing
that,
what they needed to do. Sorry.
yeah, at that point, were they like, were you sharing your thoughts and
No,
okay, so you weren't telling them that like,
no,
there's a judge and the jury, like, uh,
no.
okay.
That's and this is it's there's so much that never was said. There's
Yeah.
still so much that has not been said. Nobody actually knows like what I thought was happening. You
Yeah.
know,
So
I
that
kept it
wasn't
all
voiced.
inside. I kept it all inside. And that's why I think that story that I remember of myself as a child in the back of that car, realizing that I have independent thought and
Hmm.
nobody knows what's going on unless I say it.
Yeah.
That was that in real time as
Wow.
a 20 something year old adult going
Wow.
into my 30s. Yeah. So that nobody really knew. And I will share that first round, that first episode, it went on for close to a year.
Okay.
I wasn't in the hospital for that entire time, but the delusion, the story, the evolving movie,
Yeah.
which it was an evolving movie, it grew and grew and grew. That was all here. And they only saw certain external projections of what I was actually experiencing. So, that first time around, if you want to put a diagnosis on it, I was diagnosed with bipolar.
Okay.
What I never shared though is there was a point, I don't remember exactly how long after, but there is a voice that presented itself. I didn't share that the first time.
Okay.
And for me, in my experience, I had two distinct episodes, with about, I'd say 2 years in between, maybe 2.5. And then the second round, they diagnosed me with schizophrenia because I actually shared that I had a voice.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
wasn't fully divulging the symptoms that they would have liked to use to classify what I was experiencing. So
Wow.
yeah.
And like during that time, you're in the hospital and then they finally let you go. Like, are you medicated at this point?
Yeah. So the very next day, the first thing that the discussion was, I sat down with a new doctor who, prior to this unfolding, I had, I don't want to say never. In my very early 20s, I was diagnosed, or I was given antidepressants.
Yeah.
I just never took them.
Okay.
So like psychiatry, medication, this was all new. And I was met with this doctor. Her name was Dr. Cummins. Um,
Dr. Cummins. She's
Dr.
coming.
Cummins. No, like listen, there was like a whole lot going on with words and symbols at that time.
Makes sense.
So, and I was not a good patient in those early days. If we were labeling it maybe from the doctor's perspective, I was not a compliant patient.
Okay.
Um, and interestingly enough, that first day they put me on lithium, which is an old psychiatric medication. They've been using it for decades. And my grandmother, same grandmother, she was on lithium in her later
Okay.
years in life.
Okay.
So I was like, what is this? Why,
Yeah.
like, so I ended up, yeah, they put me on medication. I had to have been in there. What they do when you go into a hospital and they can tell that you're not able to I wouldn't say advocate for yourself. If you're not in the capacity to make decisions for yourself, they certify you. So
Okay.
they'll essentially take away your rights as a patient. So I think I was in there for 30 days. Certification, at least here in Alberta, is like, I think it's 30 days is the standard.
Wow.
So
OD. So you're there for
yeah,
30 days?
yeah, the U of A psychiatric hospital. I'm pretty sure I was there for the duration of that 30 days.
And what were you doing daily in there?
Every day was different. I mean,
Wow.
like, yeah, because I mean, I want to describe this really clearly because we
Yeah.
can talk about it on the physical level. We can talk about it from the doctor kind of like, we can talk about it in this sickness level because we're in hospital, we're sick, we're medicating, all those things. But then there was this whole other level that you and I love to talk about.
Let's talk about that one.
Is like and I'm missing the word for it, but the spirit level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was there for. That's
Yeah.
what I was living for. Was that there was synchronicity on synchronicity. I mean, generally day to day, I mean, they have activities for you to do. There's, but yeah, this is where I get really caught up in how to like best describe it without going into great detail.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm. So the spiritual side of this, which
yeah,
obviously we'll talk more about after, but
yeah.
for you, while you're in there, you're seeing signs and symbols and you're putting numbers together. At this point, are you getting messages for things in your life or like, okay, this symbol means this? Were you at that point yet?
Yeah, there were certain messages I think that were starting to come through. At that time, there was this little radio they had next to your bed where you could listen to music and
Yes,
like change stations and stuff. They took it away even by the time I was in there the next time, but um there was things coming through in music. I was getting like I wrote a lot down. Honestly, it's hard for me to just like pull up
for sure.
really quickly, but there was a piano on the psych ward in a room. And I played piano growing up. I took lessons for many years, so I would go in that room and play the piano. But it's just interesting because the music that was coming out at the time and afterwards was like infusing with my story.
Yeah. So like
There's a
you're this
month,
main character, you're the
yeah,
star. So the music that comes on, you're playing a piano. Are you playing for like
I'm the
everyone?
muse,
Okay.
right?
Makes
And
sense.
the musicians, the artists are creating around this occurrence.
Wow.
So, because this, I guess let's just get really clear on what the story is at this point.
Yeah.
I know that there's things that are happening that are outside of this world, like realm. Okay.
Yes.
But then there's this real, very real character who was my marketing teacher. And I think he's orchestrating a lot of what's going on still. He was
Yes.
a thread through like months. Okay. So,
Wow.
um, the story that I thought I was living at that point was if you are who you say you are, show us.
Okay.
Show us. So it was in my writing, it was in my conversations. It was
Proving.
like yes, all the things. Um because like I mentioned, it was a series of trials.
Wow.
I was going through trials. That's what I thought because at the end there's an ending.
That's right.
I thought there's an ending. I thought there would be this point where the people would come out and say, "You did it.
Wow.
Good job." Yeah. So that kept me going for quite a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Um,
It's like
yeah.
it's actually profound. And when you're sharing this right now, people that
Mm-hmm.
have gone through situations are going to be able to resonate so hard because it's like it's such an it's you're so alone because it's just you in your mind and like it makes
Yeah.
so much sense to you.
Yeah.
And you're
So
like,
something,
yeah,
can I share something really quick? Because
please.
a question, I have shared my story with not to this extent or to any great extent, but just enough so if someone that has a family member, let's say, or knows someone close to them that has schizophrenia or they're really challenged with their mental health somehow, they say like, what what can I do? What can I do to help my family? Like, how can I help them? Because you're obviously doing something right.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult question to answer because, um, first of all, I've met people in hospital who have also been diagnosed with schizophrenia or schizoaffective, which is bipolar schizophrenia. Um, and I've talked to them on a human level of just not trying to figure out what's wrong with them, but just actually just talking.
Yeah.
Like, if they're sitting there writing, I'm asking them, well, what are you writing about?
Yeah.
And they're very much in their world of that reality
Yes.
that we call schizophrenia. I have friends that I still talk to and that are diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they have a whole other perception of what this is. So to give some sort of short answer, like there's a wholesale solution to this, is not possible, but this is my answer, and I would hope it can help someone. So I always preface by saying every single person's scenario is uniquely individual to them,
Yeah.
just as in life,
Yeah.
right? We're
Mm-hmm.
all right. So,
Yes.
and I go back to a story that I learned while I was going to school around that period when it all happened. I was in a supervision course. I love that it was called supervision. So my teacher, we were practicing communication techniques and how to speak better and how to synthesize with people, maybe employees, maybe just people in general. And she was watching me have a conversation with one of my peers in the class, and she noted that my voice went up at a certain point, kind of like went up, like
Yeah.
I was kind of getting frustrated, so my voice went up, kind of that
Yeah.
sort of. And it led to her sharing something that has never left me to this day, and it was this. She she was using this in the context of matching energies with people so that you can have productive conversations. But I think she was sharing an anecdote about her son who has autism, and he was a child that had autism where he'd sit and rock, which is
Okay.
common with children, right? So he'd sit on the couch and he'd rock back and forth. And I like to say the child was a rocker when I tell this story. The child was a rocker.
He's
He
a
loved to
rocker.
rock. So the teacher went and sat next to him and she started rocking with him. He's
Okay.
rocking like this aggressively. She's rocking next to him. And then she rocks with him for quite some time, and then she slows down and she starts rocking a bit slower. And you know what the child did? He started rocking at her pace.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like that analogy. I like that story because when I look back and think of what could have helped me,
Yeah.
what did I need? I needed someone to rock with me.
Mm.
Um, Someone to just enter my world and say, "What you doing in there?
Yeah.
Can I rock with you a little bit? What
Wow.
if we rock at my pace now?" Right?
Wow.
Nobody really did that. So the first advice I say is just find out what frequency they're rocking at. Find out what tune they're rocking to. What's
Wow.
the story they're telling themselves in their heads?
Yeah.
Because you before you can do anything, you got to find out like what world they're on.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow. That's
there is
profound.
that. Yeah, there is that. Yeah, I look back, I think had someone just rocked with me a bit more as opposed to just trying to figure out what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with everybody else.
Right?
Yeah,
And
seriously.
and maybe there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, listen, when I was because eventually when I was starting to be hospitalized, because there was multiple hospitalizations, I ended up at the Alberta Hospital, which is a large facility here in Edmonton with lots of old buildings. It was founded in like the early 1900s, and the buildings were put up over decades. So they each have different characteristics of like what architecture was like over the decades. So it's just a really interesting place to be, first of all. And then there's lots of grounds. There's green space. It's kind of a beautiful place to be if you have to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, I started understanding, I guess, the psych ward life a lot more, but I was also very much living my life in there with the story and the world I was living in, the movie. And there unequivocally 100% I would look out again to
Yeah.
the greater picture. And I was 100% convinced that all y'all are the crazy ones on the outside. We were the sane ones on the inside.
Yeah.
The sane ones were on the inside,
Yeah.
100%. That's how I perceived it, at least.
Yeah. And oh my God, there's so much I want to touch on about what you've talked about,
Yeah.
but I'm going to save it
Yeah.
to when we get through. But it's like there's so many different levels to this. When I think about your experience and you're in there and like the tools and what we know today of the brain and what level you were on of the drinking and the nutrition and the not sleeping, you know, your frequency, everything, there was nothing, you're just fully depleted.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know, you're,
Open,
pardon,
fully open
and
too.
fully open with no boundaries. And you
Right.
guys will talk about we'll talk about this in depth in a little bit. But you know, and all these people are there, and it's like, you know, what we know now of nutrition and working out and serotonin and vitamins are all very lucrative components that everybody needs. And
Mm-hmm.
it's such an important step for mental health. And
Yeah.
what, where we're going, I'm going to let you take over, um, is just going to unlock so much for people that are in it, that they're in that vibration, that going through that. So let's go to the stage of like, you know, you're being pricked, you're on medication, you're staying there, you've moved to multiple hospitals. How do you get out and to living on your own again? Like what was the
Yeah.
stages to get there?
Yeah. So I have to be fully transparent. The timeline is blurry
I bet.
with some of the things and how it all unfolded. But I know after that first stay, I went home and I was put on I went on disability, for sure, short-term disability. So I wasn't working, um, which I was living by myself at that time. So that was also a huge catalyst, which we can't ignore, is, you know, we hear a lot about community,
Mhm.
how important community is. I was in a space of people I was around a lot, but I didn't have a community. And I went home to an empty house where I couldn't ask, is this rational? Does this make sense? Are they seeing something happening here that's
Mhm.
degrading my health? There
Yeah.
was no checks or balances in that sense either. So, but then I go out, I'm on these medications. I can't quite remember which ones I was on because there was several and they were all very horrible in terms of side effects, brain fog. I couldn't even think. There was some days I could hardly lift my head. Um,
Just numb.
and then trying to even remember like to take it or like what to take. And so I went home to an empty house and I wasn't working. And it was, and I had, and I was, the movie was still going.
Hmm.
The movie was still very real. So it just perpetuated and kept going. But then, I mean, to go back to the first night we met, when we sat down and really started unpacking some of these things, although albeit briefly, I shared some of the things that I experienced. There was like the voice telling me to take a bath. The voice would get me to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
These things were openings.
Yeah.
They were, and maybe you want to kind of speak to that a bit more. Like I think I would say that like this, like a vortex that kind of like was opening, like putting me in the bath. Like it was ways, because I didn't have boundaries
Yeah.
with the spirit world. So it was just ways to continually keep me open.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like in the movie. So I'll do what you say, no boundaries. Why
So
not?
true.
Say
Yeah.
la vie. This is the trial, right? So
Totally.
I would drive to a graveyard in the middle of the night
Yeah.
and go hang out with the spirits, you
Yeah.
know,
And it was,
not consciously thinking that's what I was doing, by the way, just
yes,
following instructions because, um, I was a vehicle for the undead or for the
yes,
dead, rather. I was, yeah.
100%. And maybe why don't we kind of pull that in and just share your experience of meeting and then, we've gotten to the place where you and I are connecting and
Yeah.
we go for dinner and then you had gotten that download of like, well, why am I going to go back to this hotel room all by myself when I've just met Kristen and I'm at this beautiful place. So
Yeah.
let's go from there.
Yeah. So I felt called to come sit with you. I already like felt so connected with you like right away. And I hadn't really I didn't even know you and Tiffany were like friends or like I didn't make like full on connections. So like sitting there with both of you
Yeah.
and just feeling completely invited
Aw.
to just be me.
Mm.
Be me. And like it was an unspoken invitation, but I felt it and I felt so incredibly safe. And we just opened up and I've opened up and you figuratively held me and held that space for me. And I had never felt that validated in what I shared. And what I knew was what happened and the reality till I told you guys and you're like, oh yeah. You're like, oh yeah, that's legit. Like that's so and I remember I just have to share this part because it was just I forgot about it till recently. But at one point I said to you, I said, I've been keeping myself so small. And then that wine glass fell on the floor on the table next to us. There's these wonderful couples sitting there. We had already like smiled and maybe interacted with them at that point or something. This wine glass shatters on the floor, wine everywhere. And they look over at some point during or after and they said, we didn't even hit that wine glass.
Mm-hmm.
It just fell off the table.
Yeah. And I was just
Remember
like,
that?
I remember that. And I was like, that is the biggest. So for me, my sign is if something shatters and breaks, you've
Mm-hmm.
just broken this energy and you've just disrupted kind of that negative, what you'd call negative. I don't believe in like,
Yeah.
negative and positive, but it in human terms, it's
Mm-hmm.
negative energy and it's been disrupted. And so, Dee, I want to let you keep going with what you're saying, but like the moment Dee had shared her secret that she had been even if I don't want to use words for you, but it's
Okay.
almost like secret, but kind of shame or like embarrassment of like maybe not that far, but kind of like I don't really want to tell this to people and like openly be like, oh, guess what I've been through.
How? Like how even? I don't know how. Like I didn't know how. I'm learning how. I've also been processing it since that time, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think secret is is a reasonable word and fair word to describe how I've felt about my secret inner life,
Yeah.
you know.
And like when you shared that with us, and it happened so fast, like it was just like this safe space where, like you said, it's like you're probably thinking, what the hell? Like, how did I even just share that? Like, came
Yeah.
from nowhere. You just
Yeah.
felt so safe
Mm-hmm.
and said that to us. And we're both like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's normal.
Yeah.
Totally just
Yes.
like
Yeah. You're like,
validated,
oh,
right?
you didn't have boundaries. Like no, you didn't say it quite like that, but it was affirming. You didn't have boundaries with the spirit world.
Yeah.
You were a vessel.
Yeah.
You were wide open.
Yes.
And my dialogue up until then that I had been telling myself is, and the way I would have described it is like the way it felt is like this veil kind of dropped between
Mm-hmm.
what we see and then what there is, the unseen,
Yeah.
and the energetics of just like that's moving around us that we just don't see, right?
And I love that. I love this conversation because this gives us an opportunity and an invitation to share with people, just like we have people roaming Earth and living their lives, whether they're doing, in some people's eyes, terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is energy. So just like in this scene world, we have the spirit realm, call it consciousness, call it spirit, call it spiritual, whatever you want. They are just in an energetic form. We are in this form. We get to operate our meat suit and live this life
Mm-hmm.
on Earth School, on planet Earth. Now, if we zoom out and we look further than ourselves, and I want to say 8 out of 10 people are very conditioned to the seen world of what they see in front of their eyes, themselves, their family, maybe their work. And that's maybe as far as they're capable of going. But if you actually zoom out and you look around, do you think we're the only planet? No, there's multiple planets. Do you think that there's other things out there? Yes. And there's so much out there, from whether you want to go from mediums to spiritual teachers to gurus around the world that have came and exited here, that have talked about this information.
Yeah.
And so for Dee, in my view, she went through a catastrophic event of high stress, but not recognizing how much pressure she was under, and to the point where her vibration is so flippin' low. She's not doing any self-care. She's not doing anything that's going to assist her mental health, and then sleep deprivation times 10.
Yeah.
You're blown open. And so when you're connecting without even knowing and you're receiving signs and symbols, energy loves that. And there's multiple forms of energy. So depending on which frequency you're operating at is inviting that realm in. So when we sat with Dee, we're like, oh my gosh, like boundaries, protection, grounding yourself, making sure, just like how we allow people to treat us in our daily lives, our husband, a wife, a best friend, whoever, a teacher, how you allow other people to treat you is the same boundary that you need on the energetic field. I don't care who you are. And so here we have these beautiful kids that are born, they're blown open, and they're these gifts on earth. And then parents can easily just go, they say imaginary friend, or they talk about Mom, I had this mom in this life,
Mhm.
past lives, all these things. It's all
Mhm.
so real. But what happens is we get so caught up in our day-to-day life that we're not seeing it. So then we discredit it. And then we go to the schizophrenic realm. And yes, there is a fine line because there can be scary situations where people are getting messages to say, go jump off a bridge. And
Yeah.
you know what? I'm kind of segueing this in. Kevin Hines, who was recently on the podcast, he jumped off of a bridge because of voices.
Right.
And so that's the same thing. He grew up on pop, Coca-Cola, no nutrition, nothing, sleep deprivation, all these things. So it was a recipe for the realm to come in and to take over because it's basically an open vessel. So
Mhm.
let's come back to you. And so we're sitting there and we're basically just completely agreeing and understanding you and your entire experience in 3 minutes and validating, like, oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
totally normal.
I mean, in a nutshell, yeah, like it was that quick, but you can't equate time to impact because that has been such a profound shift that I experienced since that day we sat down and had that conversation. And you can't, it was the shattering of the glass. There was no going back after, right?
Yeah. And then, like my sharing with you, I was like, the fact that let's go here right now. Cause like the fact that your name is, um, is D, but it's
Darrel-Lynne
Darrel-Lynne.
Thieson. Yeah.
Yes. So Dar, who, if you guys don't know, he has exited. It will be 2 years coming up soon.
Mhm.
And he had taught me so much about spirituality in the spiritual world. And when he exited, it was just like grief times 10 that I'd never experienced, but it even blew me open even more to me being able to receive messages and information and connecting with him. And so when D comes along and I'm like, I didn't even know until later on that your actual name is
Darrel-Lynne. So
Darrell,
Darr.
Darr, and Dar is actually Darr.
Yeah.
And so the crazy thing is, I know all these signs that I've connected with him and been through courses and learned how to connect properly and boundaries and all these sorts of things for many, many years.
Hmm.
And then you come on to my into my world and 222 is a thing because he was born on February 22nd, which is 0222. So that's where 222 comes in.
Hmm.
You and I go for lunch and the bill is 222. Your name is has Dar in it. We
Yeah.
go dancing and remember the DJ?
Yes.
The DJ
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to even be there. It was supposed to be
Right.
a different DJ. And then this guy comes in and his plaque says darling with Dar. And I'm just like, I think I even wrote it down. It was like, there were so many things that you and I we just were just like, okay, this was just so meant to
It
be.
hasn't stopped since
It has
then.
not stopped.
Even us saying, okay, now is our word.
Yeah.
And then now fam on a license plate. Like, they talk about there's a scientific term for it. I'm terrible with scientific terms because
Me too.
it's but it's just like this. They try to explain the way I kind of rationalize it is they put these terms on things to kind of explain away the synchronicity and the signs. And there is some validity in the fact that we have this recognition bias where if we see a certain thing, we're going to see it in other places. That's real.
Yeah, and it's called energy because what you focus on, you
Yeah.
attract.
Yes, 100%. But there's a whole other tune on that dial.
I agree.
That's where um I feel like we play,
Yeah,
you know.
100%.
It
And
goes beyond that.
it does go beyond that. And what I want to circle back to is the frequency and where you were operating on. So, D, you guys, like, and so many other people that get diagnosed as something so scary,
Hmm.
if it could be taught to
Hmm.
kids, to adults along the way of how to energetically protect yourself, how to have boundaries with all realms, including this one, and to recognize it. And so Dee was so blown open. She was just connecting to anything and anyone. So she connected with certain signs and symbols, and whether it be the drinking of the alcohol, going in the car, going to the gravesite, she was just guided.
Yeah.
But she's so fucking gifted, just needed to have a teacher to
Hmm.
actually teach her how to use her gift. And we have these beautiful indigo children, which is a card that you and I have pulled many times of how to help these beautiful, beautifully gifted children that enter here to harness this in a beautiful way, opposed to there's something wrong with you, you're sick, and you got to go on meds. And yes, there's a time and place for everything. I'm not a doctor. I am not here to diagnose anything like that, but inform and maybe there's another way.
A
And
hundred.
so I'd like to go back to, I would love to for you to share your turning point of getting off of your meds and like this new life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so much there that even in what you just said, we could just pull apart and like dissect because there's so much there. Um, Something that I've said on multiple occasions is had I not been in this Western world of this westernized health system, I don't call it like calling it healthcare, this whatever you want to call our medical system that we have. Did it have pieces that needed to be in place to help me? Yes. I'm forever grateful
Yeah,
for what it did and what it was. And that's what it is at this time for a reason. But I also say, had I been born somewhere else at a different time, I imagine a shaman or someone of that equivalent would have taken me under their wing.
yes,
They would have helped me nurse my health. They would have taught me how to harness my gifts. And then I would have been able to heal, but then also help others heal. Right.
100%.
Um, but we on a different highway, right? Where we are and what's happening right now. And that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Um, but so the best way I can really describe how I got to not even to here, but to a point where I could work
Yeah.
or I could own my home was I was medicated to find my baseline.
Okay.
So we ended up getting to a point where we found a couple agreeable meds that worked really well together and worked with me. I fought it the whole time and fought for lower doses, um, enough so that I wasn't experiencing all the horrific side effects.
Yeah.
Um, and then I learned what my baseline was. How do I function so I'm not going in and out of, as you would, kind of describe this like range of like the highs are too high and the lows are too low. How do we kind of stay in this mid range?
Yeah.
And then yeah, so that's that's where kind of but the way I also describe it is because what happened during all this is it peeled back the layers of reality and how I actually perceived the world. And I mean, if we were really to boil it down into a statement, how much bullshit is actually happening,
Yeah.
how upside down, backwards, butt fuck
Yeah.
wrong it is.
Yes.
Even how patients are treated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, I was on beautiful grounds on some points, but we're also locked into like, you know, you have
Mm-hmm.
that, it's not a nurturing place where your soul is being nurtured back to health.
Yeah.
This is the the structure of the system
Yeah.
anyhow. So I just want to add, I just think it's important to kind of add that perspective in because, yeah, so because I was blown open and saw the bullshit, the writing was on the wall. I could see through everything.
Yes.
The way I see the goal of the healthcare system that I was in, even remembering how I said the outside world looked crazy, we were the same ones.
Mm-hmm.
I was being re-assimilated. They were
Yes.
assimilating me so I could go back
Mm-hmm.
to the outside world
It's like Barbie.
and function.
Yes.
And
You know,
that's essentially, if you really want to boil it down, Kristen, that's what they accomplished.
yeah.
But but I have also broken free of so much of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's so much profoundness in what I could share and why my life is the state that it is and so beautiful as it is, knowing that even I work for a company called Awake and Winning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just to go back to your question though, in terms of how I've gotten to this point, well, it did help that I made a career change and um I started volunteering at a company in 2019 called Mental Wealth. And that company is, well, it's in the name, Mental Wealth. So, and it's evolved since then to Awaken Winning, but
Yes.
it taught me so much about the things that you were even mentioning, like that you've mentioned, the just sleep, light, circadian rhythm, diet, nutrition, movement, mindset. I mean, I could go on. Do you know? It's
Y-
so, yeah,
it's even the little things like grounding, getting outside, going for a walk,
yeah, all those things.
get into the what am I trying to say right now?
Hmm.
Um, come on. We were just talking about it, like sauna, steam,
Yes,
breath work, like all
yes.
of the things.
Every all the things. And I don't want to negate, like, there was a time that I was on this planet before mental wealth and while I was very much on this beautiful healing journey,
Yeah.
but that was such a big catalyst
Yes.
to further my evolution in a
Hmm.
very quick way,
Yeah.
very accelerated way. So it opened my eyes that much faster, is how I'd say it.
And like going back to the spiritual realm, and Dee came in, like I said at the beginning, to learn this lesson, how to overcome her mental health, and then how to take her complete story of pain and sorrow and despair and such a whirlwind to turn it into a purpose to then help others that are going through it. She had to actually live it by example. And something that I talk about a lot is contracts. So at that very moment, her, ready for her next stage, like, the teacher appears when the student is ready. And here she is, ready to pivot to go to the next level. And then all of a sudden, this perfect job opportunity presents itself. And wasn't it that your mom had seen it?
Yeah. So there was a video that's you know,
Yeah.
that was the mental wealth project at the time. And my mom sent me this video. It was a Sunday morning. I remember exactly. I was sitting on the couch. My mom sends me this video. I watch it. And I was like, yes, yes, I need to be part of this some way, somehow.
Yes.
And not to mention, I was already putting out at that point, like, I want to help somehow. I want to be part of something bigger than myself so
Mhm.
that we can help people. So I can help. But I was still in this like corporate structure mind where I
Yes.
was applying at like the Canadian Mental Health Association and like kind of going these like kind of standardized routes. I didn't see beyond that until this video came into my realm, and I was like, okay, I need to be part of this. So I volunteered,
Wow.
and now it's my full-time job. For the last 2 years, it's been my full-time career.
So 2019 is when you started.
2019, yeah.
And like, here you go. It's like you were ready. It presented itself. And it's like the universe, your spirit team just takes you. And it's like, this is where we're going.
Mhm.
And like,
I have to go back to the quote you
yes,
just said though, because you said that the teacher appears when the student is ready. But there's so much beauty in that for me in my mind, because remember, the teacher at way back was my marketing teacher. He didn't know he was the teacher that he was going to be, but
that's right.
he was the turning point in
Yeah.
that. And
And
then
even that book.
I have a quote in my office downstairs that says she was never quite ready, but she's brave, and the universe listens to brave. And to say that this the teacher appears when the student is ready, I was never quite ready, but
No.
I'm brave, and the universe listens to brave, right?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And like, even today in this moment, to get you, like, this is what I call, as you know, breaking another ceiling. Like, you're breaking through the ceiling that's an invisible ceiling that we all have. And it's like, feeling the feelings of moving through something. Well, just fucking do it anyways. And the confidence will show up. It's like so brave of you to share your story because it's like, there could be people out there that are going to judge, and there could be people out there that this is going to save their lives. Who are we going up for bat for? The ones that it's going to save their lives. I don't care. And I know you don't care what other people think. What we care about is helping others that need it.
That's something I'm overcoming, is not caring what people think. But
Yes.
that's why I'm stepping into this, and because I want to be on that other side of just like, I don't care at all.
And
Can I
and
just
you're
share?
doing it. Yeah.
Oh, look,
Oh,
the lights just went out in here.
so that is a really good sign.
Yeah.
Yet again, you guys don't fuck around with signs, okay? 222s, 1111s, the lights flickering, a song coming on, and you remember your mom, used to say this thing and it's in the song. Do not discredit anything. Everything is on purpose. It's
Mhm.
completely, there's no coincidences. I'm sorry. Okay,
There
say it.
isn't. Well, I wanted to share because I wrote down my intention for
Oh,
this conversation.
let
Can
me
I
hear
share that?
it.
Yeah.
Please. The floor is yours, beauty.
And like as we all know at this point, this was popping my podcast cherry. So we were breaking the ceiling today. So I kept my intentions very simple. I want to listen deeply.
Mm.
I want to share openly and wisely. I want to be my authentic self. I want to be vulnerable. And I want to help even one person. So I hope
Wow.
we have accomplished that in some way or shape or form. So
100%.
yeah.
And you know what else is really cool? One of my questions that I was going to ask you, and
Hmm.
you've answered it basically, is how do you want to impact this planet? And even you saying what you've just said and helping even one person,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And just think of that one person can help one person and that rippling
Yeah.
effect.
That just kind of that lands really deeply in my heart because when I started with Awaken Winning, um, that's what Kayla always said. I just want to help one person.
Mm,
And we've helped so many people at this point, like
yeah.
hundreds, if not thousands. So I've had that impact in an indirect way, but to help someone directly with my story,
Yeah.
yeah, that's if I could just, yeah, touch that soul, then let's meet. Forget eye to eye, let's meet soul to soul.
Exactly. And that is so beautiful. And your story is so beautiful. And I did want to say something about Dolores Cannon.
Hmm.
You know, she says, I just shared this. You never know, A, what somebody's going through, but you never know what life they've just had. And whether it's a resting life or a chaotic life, you have no idea. So to judge somebody else of their life in this lifetime, whether they're doing incredible things or maybe they are just living a very simple life, it
Hmm.
is not ours or our place to judge another because we have no idea what they've been through, what they're going through, or what they've may have had experienced in another lifetime. So
Yeah,
if we can come together and have compassion for each other, and ultimately, my biggest thing is love always wins. And if
100%.
you can lead from love
Yeah,
and you can help somebody else, fucking do it. And if your story can do that, share it because I believe we all have a story to be shared that deserves to be heard.
absolutely. I completely agree.
Um, there's so much that I want to like talk to you about and ask you questions about, but I know we have to like contain it some at some point. But for people that are watching and listening, what has helped you the most to get to this place of mental health, of um, being really comfortable and confident in your mind and knowing what is your thoughts and what's your mind versus something else? I've kind of asked a lot there, but
Mhm.
see what comes to you.
Well, I think the first thing coming up for me is be, this is, I don't know if this is cliche, but just be fucking relentless. Always know that there's something better if you just take the next step, because there is
Mm,
always something better and you're not going to see it right away. You might not know what it looks like, but if you just be relentless in life in knowing that there's something to live for, then it will be there. It will
yeah,
appear. Does that make sense?
it makes sense.
Now, I don't know if that necessarily answered your question, but that's what I've done. I
Well,
have been absolutely relentless.
you have. And
Yeah.
do you have a little bit of like what you give us a little bit of what you do to keep yourself at an ultimate high? And I don't want to say high, but like high vibration
Well, I wouldn't say I'm
daily.
always there.
No, because that's us, that's human.
That's life.
That's
Yeah,
living
but just
emotions.
yeah, but I mean, knowing that it's all happening for us, it's happening for me, right?
Yeah.
Even every low, everything that just didn't seem to work out in our favor. Oh, my car radio just won't turn on.
Yeah.
Maybe you're supposed to listen to the sound of the road under your tires.
Mm,
Maybe there's something there you need to tap into. Every little thing, although if seemingly trivial, is an opportunity. It's
okay.
an opportunity to say, how do I show up in this moment? How am I showing up in this moment? And how am I going to use this so that I can be a better person in this world for myself? And then it just spreads outwards,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. And another,
Ultimately, that's what I do every day, and it doesn't look good every day.
no.
It's not always pretty. It's a, I describe it as, the roller coaster sometimes, right? But the thrill is, that's the thrill. Get on, go for the
Yeah.
ride,
Yeah.
right? So,
Totally. And what about, so I know diet, working out,
yeah. So in
huge for
terms
you.
of how I show up for myself in that sense,
Yes.
yeah, it's like there's just certain things that are non-negotiables. I need to have a good sleep. I I am very like stringent with my diet. I'm constantly seeking out ways to improve my health. I
You
don't
don't drink
adhere,
alcohol?
haven't drank in over a year. I cut out caffeine in January. It's like I'm on 60 days today.
I know.
Coffee,
I know.
coffee. Yeah. So I do have a little black tea here and there, but
You're still doing the cayenne and the
I go to sauna twice a week. I do red light twice a week. I get a little sun. I take a lot of vitamin D. We don't get enough sun here.
yeah.
All the supplementation. I look outwards. I see what the people that who I look to are recommending and doing. I see what fits, and I take what, I'm not attached to any one thing,
Yeah.
but if I find something that works for me, then I'll stick to it, But sleep is a non-negotiable. So
And I think that's a 9 out of 10. Like that's 10 out of 10 for people is your sleep for your mental health.
yeah,
You have to
and I
sleep.
mean, I've shared this recently with somebody that I was talking to, is if the doctors missed the mark on every other thing, they did want me to get sleep.
Yeah.
That was something that they didn't gloss over.
Yeah.
Besides, and they didn't advocate it for it in a healthy way. They put me on sleeping pills, which has its own issues,
Yeah.
but it was, you need to sleep.
And
So
so now I will say, if you want to share, like you're free of any meds, you
yeah.
are
So in
completely natural.
2021, I just before Jules and my wedding, we were getting ready, and we were thinking maybe we'd want to start a family. So I wasn't going to even entertain that thought if I was on any sort of pharmaceutical. So it was a great door opening for me to have that conversation and start that process. So it didn't go unsupported. I was heavily supported by my psychiatrist. I sought out a naturopath. Um, I haven't widely shared that. There's still people in my family that don't know, but if they listen to this, they'll know that I haven't been on medication since 2021. But they have nothing to worry about because, I mean, 3 years under my belt and I'm only getting better. So I feel very confident in my ability to just continue flourishing. So yeah, I tapered off over 6 to 8 months, and
Wow.
yeah, med free.
Look how far you've come. Like
Yeah, yeah,
this is celebration. I'm so proud of you and so grateful to be a part of your journey and our friendship. And like, it's like you look back and that road when you're in it was just, it was life consuming. That's all that you knew. And now it's like, look at you today. You're on a podcast sharing your story. It's just so surreal. And I will say, you've honed in on your gifts to give it a time and a space to close down, to open up, to do what you need to do when you need to express and write. Like you guys, Dee's writing is just, oh, so beautiful. Like when you post your reel or you post little things, I'm just like, you have me in tears. Your heart is just heart coherence, blown open, babe. Like you're just
You know,
such a light.
like honestly, this is just a crack. I feel of it's just a crack. The door is just opening. The light beam's just a sliver, but I'm so grateful to just be here and being starting to be cracked open in the most beautiful way. And I'm so grateful for you
Mm,
to have this space. But I just want to go back to what I said to you at MYM, because this is honestly, I think it was right before you left, because we had like a fast and furious friendship come in, and we just like the vibrations were just we were vibrating at such a beautiful, and we have since, but I was just overtaken by this like, who is this goddess? I'm
mm,
like, who is this light? And I
oh,
believe I said, I can see your heart. And
yeah,
that's how I've always felt talking to you, being in your presence, just
mm,
being your friend is you see the essence and light of humanity and
oh,
every person that you come in contact with. So to be graced with that and to have someone that is helping me crack open so I
mm,
can share my light, I mean, there's really, what else is there to say? Like,
wow.
forever grateful,
Yeah.
forever thankful, soul fam,
Soul
I believe
fam.
is what I would say to that, soul
Yeah.
fam. So,
Thank you. And I wrote that down when you said that to me. I cried because I felt so seen by you because I was like, you see me for who I really am, not a shell or
no.
this other thing. It was just like, oh my God, my heart was taken and just in such a beautiful way. So thank you for being you and being so fucking brave. Like,
Well,
this
thank
is
you.
the best. And I definitely, we need to get back in this space and talk about a lot of cool things because we just scratched the surface on your experience, but also like what we're up to and what we do. It's just
Yeah.
like,
There's so much we could chat about, I'm sure.
so we're gonna pull a card, but I do think you should still share. We're gonna say happy birthday, obviously, to your grandma, but also the card. You pulled the card before um
Yes,
the
the
episode.
card. Yeah. So I pulled the card. I was just kind of getting ready. I lit some incense, and the card that I pulled from my deck, my Archangel Michael deck, was, and I called in my grandmother to offer some guidance with this card pull. And the card I pulled was, "You're on the right path."
How
Thanks, Grandma.
beautiful. And she's guiding you every step of the way, just like woo, cheering you on
Yeah,
beyond.
100%.
And Dee and I, we talk about spiritual stuff, and I've obviously share every tool that I possibly can of staying in the light and of connecting with high vibration and ensuring, all those things, just like I do here on the show. But it's like, even when you're card pulling, set your intention. Who are you pulling a card from? Ground your energy, ensure that you are doing everything intentionally and who it's from. Because if you're just like, oh, I'm just going to pull a card, everything is energy. How do you know what you're pulling from? So, side note, I'd like to close with a card pull for Dee, but I've also asked Dee if she would pull a card for all of you guys that have tuned in. So this is going to be a message for your highest and best good always. And it'll be cool because whenever you're watching this, it's going to land in divine time for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go first?
I sure can, yeah.
Woo!
My deck.
I love that deck. And Dee and I forgot to say this, we pull cards for each other like randomly. She'll pull a card for me and send it. And I'm always like,
Yeah.
this is just what I needed to hear. It's
It
amazing.
always lands in the best way, both ways,
Yes.
I think. So
And like one more thing, I'm like, I can't shut up. Why wouldn't anybody want to seek some assistance? If you have a team that's surrounding you that is here to help you fulfill your mission and to be in alignment or help you connect with a soulmate or be in this beautiful job, why wouldn't you? It's free and you just have to we have our free will, so you just have to say, "Okay, spirit team help me," or "Loved one help me, show me a sign," or
yeah.
"No, I'm working through this right now," and give them your permission to step in and help because it's so real, so
We
flipping.
can't negate the signs that we're just missing either.
Exactly. And
Sometimes
being
you have to look
present.
up.
You got it. That's
Be
it.
present. They're all
Being,
happening.
yeah,
Don't get to the point where you need to ask for a sign, I'd say. No,
right.
I say that in jest, but I get that. I get there. It happens to everyone. So
Yeah. Or people wait till they're sick on their deathbed and then they're begging for something.
yeah.
Don't
Don't
wait that
wait.
long. Make the choices today.
Everything's, oh my gosh, we could go on.
I love
Everything's
this.
flowing in divine synchronicity. It's all
Yes.
coming in for us.
Yes.
If we attach a bad emotion to it, then that's where we're failing ourselves.
Yeah.
Then we're missing the message. Don't miss the message.
I agree.
Okay. I'm just gonna finish shuffling here.
This is the collective message. I'm ready.
Admit the truth to yourself and act accordingly. And there's a unicorn, which who doesn't love a good unicorn? Admit the truth to yourself and act accordingly. My prayer, I appreciate your support in helping me face my feelings with grace and acceptance so that I can be lovingly honest with myself and others. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for giving me courage and strength.
Wow. It's the illusion, right? The illusion's crumbling and
That's right.
we're all so consumed with this chase or this journey or this destination. Stop with the illusions. Just come back to here, this moment. This is all we have. We do not know
Now,
tomorrow. No, yeah.
now,
Okay, mic drop.
my job, hard for it.
Okay, I am pulling a card for D for her highest and best good. Please let us know what it is. Using these cards to communicate a message. I always freak out with this shit. 8 of Ariel, which 8 is the infinity. But remember, we talk about the 8 being open because we're like, we don't want to keep going in a circle jerk. We want to get off of the circle and
100%.
out of the cycle.
You need that kind of 8.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it was funny because when you and I talked about that, you were just like, huh, funny enough, I have this little out.
Yeah, I got a note for you. Oh
Perfect.
my God, dude. Okay.
So it says, take great pride in your excellent work. Practice makes perfect. Consider getting additional education or training. But that is not the message that I'm receiving. It is, there's the book, and here is that light, and all of the writings and all of that information that's in there. That's you. You are the book, you are the light, and it's just being cracked open. And it's like you said, here's that light
Yeah,
shining through. And it's
I love it.
this
And
beautiful.
I'm honestly like so open to needing more, like needing more information and I wouldn't say education because there's
No,
knowledge would be more the word I'd be because as we as much as we and I think there's like even a saying for it, but the more we learn, the more we know, the more we just realize we don't know. So
I love that you said that.
yeah,
And the other thing is you can see the angel that's like right over their shoulder. It's like you are always guided. It's like she is pointing to the book of like, this is the next step.
I love
And
it.
you're so right about that. It's like you think you know, but you have no idea. So even when I talk about our loved ones and connection and what's out there, we maybe know 4%, if that.
Yeah.
So just keep your brains and your hearts open and allow miracles in. Show me how good it gets.
Tell me how good.
Yes. Okay, so thank you all for holding space and for tuning in. Thank you, Dee, for being you and sharing your fucking light. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I am here for it, cheering you on every step of the way.
Thank you so much.
This is the beginning.
Only
Woo!
the beginning.
Okay, everybody. Peace out.